So I have a question for you. Have you ever kind of examined the things that we say to our children or the things we allow them to watch or listen to? I know for some of the parents in the room, maybe this is a constant thing, or maybe you're an aunt or an uncle or anything like that, but you've been around children, and some movies, TV shows, songs, they're completely off limits, right? Oh, you can't watch that. You can't listen to that. That isn't really made for children. And some things are obvious, right? I love a good action movie as much as the next person, but showing a small child the latest John Wick movie where he kills hundreds of people probably is a bad idea, right? But other things we just kind of let slide, like specifically nursery rhymes. Most of us have sung Ring Around the Rosie to our children, right? Ignoring the fact that this song was written about the bubonic plague that happened in the 1600s in London that killed over 100,000 people. But it's so soothing to my child. Or Rockabye Baby. Rockabye baby on the treetop. When the wind blows, the cradle will rock. When the bough breaks, the cradle will fall. And down will come baby, cradle and all. Why is there an infant in a tree in the middle of a storm? What are we doing? Where are their parents? What is happening right now? And I kind of feel the same way about the story we're going to read today. That even though we often show it to kids, and often when we read it to kids, it might not be the best for kids. The story is David and Goliath. And if you grew up in church or you were involved in children's ministry when you were younger, you know David and Goliath is like the top 3 most common children's story, right? It's some order of Jesus feed the 5,000, Noah's Ark, and David and Goliath. Some of those orders. But as you're going to see in the story, there are certain elements of the story that are definitely not appropriate for children. So if you were here last week, Pastor Zach did an amazing job of kind of setting the table for this series and the life of David. And you see, David is chosen by God to be the next king of Israel. But now we kind of enter into this long waiting period because David is chosen by God to be the eventual king of Israel. But from the time he is chosen to the time he actually goes to the throne of Israel is 15 years. So we're in this kind of waiting period right now. And we're going to see the ups and the downs of the life of King David over these next couple of weeks and months. And to be clear, David makes some massive, massive mistakes. But as you're going to see over these next couple of weeks, David is close to being flawless in these first few stories. It seems like he makes all the right choices when he's younger, trusting God. But really the problems begin to arise when he actually ascends to the throne and becomes king. But like I said, we're a long way away from that. Last week, we left off in 1 Samuel chapter 16, verse 13, when it says, from that day being the day that God appointed David to be the next king, from that day on, the Spirit of the Lord came powerfully upon David. And you begin to see God working through the life of David. At the end of chapter 16, it actually tells us that Saul himself invites David to serve in his kingdom. And Saul knows that David is going to be the next king, but it feels like he's kind of giving him a chance right here. And he actually invites him to come play music. David is a musician, and Saul's kind of going through a lot. He's got some anxiety, he's got some other things going on, and the music that David plays actually calms and soothes Saul. But today we're going to be in 1 Samuel chapter 17. If you have your Bible, I would love for you to turn to 1 Samuel chapter 17. 1 Samuel is in the Old Testament towards the beginning of the Bible. And chapter 17 starts off with telling us that Israel and the Philistines are at war. And the Philistines are kind of in the background of almost the entire Old Testament. They're actually mentioned as early as the book of Genesis. And they are a powerhouse. This isn't some little podunk little country or nothing country. They are a powerhouse of war, and they are a people to be reckoned with. It actually tells us earlier in 1 Samuel chapter 4, that Philistine and Israel are at war, and the Philistines actually defeat Israel in that battle. They kill 4,000 of their soldiers, and they capture the Ark of the Covenant, the dwelling place of God. So they've already lost to these people, and they're at war again. So we're going to be reading 1 Samuel chapter 17, starting in verse 3. Here's what it says. The Philistines occupied one hill, and the Israelites another, with a valley in between them. A champion named Goliath, who was from Gath, came out of the Philistine camp. His height was 6 cubits and a span. He had a bronze helmet on his head and wore a coat of scale armor of bronze weighing 5,000 shekels. On his legs he wore bronze greaves, and a bronze javelin was slung on his back. His spear shaft was like a weaver's rod, and its iron point weighed 600 shekels. His shield bearer went out ahead of him. So the Bible's kind of setting the scene here. Basically, the two countries are at war. And on one side, we have the Philistine army. They're kind of up on this hill. And then there's this huge valley in between them. And the other side, up on another hill, is the Israelite army. And it almost feels like they're at a standstill. No one's really going to attack first. No one's really going to fight first. And they're just kind of in this weird spot. But then it tells us that the Philistines, they have this champion. They have this warrior named Goliath. And the Bible tells us that he's tall. But if you don't really know what's going on here, you're just like, well, how tall? It says he's 6 cubits and a span, which sounds like made up jargon, right? You're like, what is that? Okay, but actually it's not made up. It's actually how they used to measure things. So 6 cubits. A cubit is usually the length of your forearm. It's roughly about 18 inches or so. And so he's 6 cubits, 6 times 18, plus a span. A span is actually from your thumb to your pinky, roughly about 9 inches. So 6 times 18 plus 9 is 117 inches, or 9 feet, 9 inches tall. Okay, if you've ever been to a basketball game, or I got any NBA fans or anything like that, a regulation basketball hoop is 10 feet tall. Homeboy is 3 inches away from hitting his head on the rim without jumping. He's a massive human being. But is it one of those situations where he's just like tall and skinny and like a slight breeze blows him over? You've all met those people before where it's like, I feel like I can breathe on you, and you'd start to cry. And the Bible does not tell us how much he weighs. The Bible does tell us how much some of his armor weighs, which leads us to believe he is not tall and skinny. He is a huge human being. It tells us that just his coat of armor on his chest weighs 5,000 shekels, which is 125 pounds worth of armor just on his chest. Have you guys ever worked out in one of those like weighted vests? Am I the only maniac that does that? Yes, I have a weighted vest. Yes, I work out. This is the situation that I'm dealing with at all times. That's how I'm starting with deal with it, all right? But I have one of those weighted vests. I think it weighs like 15, maybe 20 pounds. I think it's 15 pounds. I put that thing on, and I can barely breathe. And I'm like, homeboy has 125 pounds on just his chest. Plus, he's got leg armor on. Plus, he probably has armor on his arms. He's got a bronze helmet. He has a javelin that weighs 15 pounds. He probably has close to 200 pounds worth of armor on him at all times. He is a massive human being. This is the most jacked human being you've ever seen in your life. 9 feet, 9 inches tall, probably 400, 450, maybe 500 pounds. Huge person. And this isn't just the Bible exaggerating. We actually have scrolls from the Egyptians that are dated the 1300 BC that talk about warriors that were 7 to 9 feet tall in the land of Canaan, the very place where this battle is taking place. But Goliath, he's not some gentle giant. He isn't meek. He isn't humble. He is the best, strongest, and biggest warrior, and he knows it. And he tells every single person that can hear him what he knows. Check out what he says to the Israelite army, starting in verse 8. Goliath stood and shouted to the ranks of Israel, "Why do you come out and line up for battle? Am I not a Philistine, and are you not servants of Saul? Choose a man and have him come down to me. If he is able to fight and kill me, we will become your subjects. But if I overcome him and kill him, you will become our subjects and serve us." Then the Philistines said, "This day I defy the armies of Israel. Give me a man and let us fight each other." On hearing the Philistines' words, Saul and all the Israelites were dismayed and terrified. So Goliath is going out and just mocking Israel, mocking God, taunting all of Israel. It actually goes on to tell us that he does this every morning and every night for 40 days, mocking them, basically saying, you're not going to touch me. I'm way stronger than you. And three of the people that he's mocking, three of the soldiers that he's mocking, are actually three of the older brothers of David. They are soldiers in the Israelite army. And one day, Jesse, the father of David and the father of the three sons that are out at war, he basically invites David. He says, hey, David, come here real quick. You see, David's not at war. He's back in the kingdom. He, kind of serving part-time with Saul, playing music, and then also being a shepherd as well. But Jesse summons him. He says, David, here's what I want you to do. I want you to go out to the battlefield. I want you to check on your brothers. I want you to check on my sons. And so he kind of loads them up with some food, loads them up with some supplies, and he basically sends them off. He says, come back, bring a report. I want to see if they're still alive. I want to see how they are doing. We're going to skip down to verse 20. Here's what it says. Early in the morning, David left the flock in the care of a shepherd, and he loaded up and set out, just as Jesse, his father, had directed. He reached the camp as the army was going out to its battle positions, shouting its war cry. Israel and the Philistines were drawing up their lines and facing one another. David left his things with the keeper of the supplies. He ran to the battle lines and he asked his brothers how they were. As he was talking with them, Goliath, the Philistine champion from Gath, stepped out of his lines and shouted his usual defiance, and David heard it. Whenever the Israelites saw the man, they all fled from him in great fear. So David is now getting kind of a front row seat to this Goliath guy. Maybe he's heard whispers, maybe he's heard rumors about this mythical, almost 10 feet tall warrior, but he's now seeing that this person is real. But he's also kind of like, why is no one doing anything about this? Oh, what's going on? Why are we just standing here? Why aren't we attacking this guy? And he says so in verse 25. Here's what it says. Now the Israelites had been saying, do you see how this man keeps coming out? He keeps coming out to defy Israel. The king will give great wealth to the man who kills him, and he will also give him his daughter in marriage, and will exempt his family from taxes in Israel. David asked the man standing there, what will be done for the one who kills the Philistines and removes this disgrace? Who is this uncircumcised Philistine that he should defy the armies of God? I love this moment right here because it's a couple small throwaway lines, but I think it's there to remind us that David is just still a punk kid that doesn't listen. Okay, so the army, all the soldiers are basically like, you know what's going to happen if someone kills this guy? They're going to become wealthy, they're going to get married, and they don't have to pay taxes. That's like the American dream, by the way. Anyways, but they're like, those are the three things. And David is sitting there and being like, so what's going to happen if we kill this guy? And they're like, we just told you, wealthy, marriage, taxes. What are you talking about? It's like, have you ever dealt with a teenager where you give them very explicit instructions? All right, here's what you're going to do. You're going to take this $5, you're going to go down to the store, and you're going to get a gallon of milk. Do you got that? And they look at you and they go, repeat everything you just said. You're like, oh, come on, dude. I literally just told you the instructions. But that's what is happening here. But David is confused. He's like, why are we afraid of this guy? Yes, I understand he's a literal giant. Yes, I understand that his armor probably weighs more than most of us actually weigh. Yes, he's intimidating. But notice what he says at the end of this. He says, Goliath defies the armies of the living God. He's asking, what are we afraid of? Do we not have God on our side? Why are you scared of this guy? Do you not know the God that we serve? Do you not know that we have been called? Do you not know that God promised to be with us? And he basically says, I'll go fight him. And kind of word starts to spread that David is feeling like he's going to go fight Goliath. And Saul kind of hears of this, and he's like, all right, come on back, bud. All right, you're being a little bit of an eager beaver here. All right, just cool it down a little bit. And so he summons David back to him, could try to kind of talk him out of it. But he also wants a little bit of a report from the battlefield. Let's pick it up in verse 32. David said to Saul, let no one lose heart on account of this Philistine. Your servant will go and fight him. Saul replied, you are not able to go out against this Philistine and fight him. You are only a young man, and he has been a warrior from his youth. We're going to see over these next couple of weeks that Saul and David develop this bitter rivalry. And Saul actually tries to kill David multiple times. But even in this moment, you can see Saul being like, bro, don't do this. You are going to get murdered. He has killed people. He has killed more people than you've met in your life. He is a literal giant. You are some punk kid. You are going to die. Don't do this. But David remains steadfast and confident. And it's not because of who David is, as you'll see, it's because he knows who God is. Verse 34, but David said to Saul, your servant has been keeping his father's sheep. When a lion or a bear came and carried off a sheep from the flock, I went after it. I struck it and rescued the sheep from its mouth. When it turned on me, I seized it by its hair, struck it, and killed it. Your servant has killed both the lion and the bear. This uncircumcised Philistine will be like one of them because he has defied the armies of the living God. The Lord who rescued me from the paw of the lion and the paw of the bear will rescue me from the hand of this Philistine. Saul said to David, go, and the Lord be with you. David's not afraid like everyone else. And it's not because he's cocky or arrogant or anything like that. He has been in scary situations before. He's been attacked by bears. He's been attacked by lions. But every single time, God has saved him. God rescued him. God delivered him. And he trusted God in those moments. Why wouldn't he trust God now? So David's mind is made up. He is going to fight and kill Goliath. Bible goes on to tell us that Saul basically is like, all right, fine. If you want to go fight him, that's totally up to you. Here, let me at least give you some armor. And so it tells us that Saul actually loads David up with a bunch of his armor, and he starts putting on this armor and a helmet and chest piece and all this type of stuff. And he's still this scrawny little kid, and he puts on all this armor, and he's like, I can't move. I can't go into this battle with all this armor. So he takes off all this armor. He says, no, I don't need any of that. And what he does, he goes to a nearby river. And it tells us that he picks up 5 small stones. He puts it in his bag, and he grabs his slingshot, and he goes to confront Goliath. Let's pick up the story in verse 41. Meanwhile, the Philistine, with his shield bearer in front of him, kept coming closer to David. He looked David over and saw that he was little more than a boy, glowing with health and handsome, and he despised him. He said to David, am I a dog that you come at me with sticks? And the Philistine cursed David by his gods. Come here, he said, and I'll give your flesh to the birds and the wild animals. Goliath is openly mocking David right here. He's telling me, this is your champion? This is the person that you're sending? You've got thousands of people and you're sending a kid at me. You're bringing a knife to a gunfight. I am going to destroy this kid. But check out David's response, verse 45. David said to the Philistine, you come against me with sword and spear and javelin, but I come against you in the name of the Lord Almighty and the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied. This day the Lord will deliver you into my hands. I will strike you down and cut off your head. This very day I will give the carcasses of the Philistine army to the birds and the wild animals, and the whole world will know that there is a God in Israel. All those gathered there will know that there is not by sword or spear that the Lord saves, but the battle is the Lord, and he will give you into our hands. He says, I'm coming at you in the name of the Lord. The Lord will deliver you. And when I kill you, everyone will know that God saves. He's already kind of laying the groundwork right here, basically saying, I'm not going to get credit for this victory. When I kill you, God's going to get the credit. God's going to get the glory. God's going to get all of the praise. This is God's battle and God's battle alone. Let's finish off the story, and it's about to get real R-rated real quick. Verse 48. As the Philistine moved closer to attack him, David ran quickly towards the battle line to meet him. Reaching into his bag and taking out a stone, he slung it and struck the Philistine in the forehead. The stone sank into his forehead, and he fell face down on the ground. So David triumphed over the Philistine with a sling and a stone, without a sword in his hand, and he struck down the Philistine and killed him. David ran over and stood over him. He took hold of the Philistine's sword, and he drew it from the sheath. After he killed them, he cut off his head with the sword. When the Philistines saw that their hero was dead, they turned and ran. Then the men of Israel and Judah surged forward with a shout and pursued the Philistines to the entrance of Gath and to the gates of Ekron. Their dead were strewn along the Shiram road to Gath and Ekron. When the Israelites returned from chasing the Philistines, they plundered their camp. David took the Philistines' head and brought it to Jerusalem, and he put the weapons in his own tent. David throws a stone so hard into his forehead that it sinks into his forehead. He falls face down. David runs over to him, steals his sword, chops off his head. I don't remember that coloring page when I was in children's ministry. We'll add a little bit of red because all the blood. Oh, like what is happening right here? What's going on? I feel like when we tell this story to children, it's like, and David threw a rock and it bounced gently off Goliath's head and he went to sleep. The end. And I grew up at this church. I had some amazing children's ministry leaders when I was younger. A lot of them are still here. And God bless the Schmidts, the Keelers, and the Corrals for withholding this information from me. Withholding the information that David kept the decapitated head of Goliath with him for multiple days on a journey home. That was probably a wise decision. But you see, this story is more than just a cute little children's story. And the story is definitely not a fairy tale that we tell ourselves. This story is about God's promise, God's power, and relying on God during our most difficult circumstances. You see, in chapter 17, there's 58 verses, and I read a good portion of them, but I would really invite you to go back and read all 58 verses in chapter 17, because there's a lot in there. There's a great interaction between David and his brothers that I just didn't have time to go through, but they're basically doubting that he can do this. But in those 58 verses, there's one verse that I feel like kind of encapsulates everything that's going on in this story. And it's David in front of Saul explaining where his confidence comes from to King Saul. It's in verse 37. Here's what it says. It says, "The Lord who rescued me from the paw of the lion and the paw of the bear will rescue me from the hand of this Philistine." And Saul said to David, "Go, and the Lord be with you." And I love that line because it's almost like the Bible then shows us instead of tells us that the Lord was with David. You see, David was facing down a giant. And this giant was backed by an army that had already defeated the Israelites just a couple chapters prior. And David, behind him, he had soldiers that were shaking in their boots. But David continued to have faith in God. Why? Why did David have so much faith in such a big and scary moment? It's because David had faith in the small moments as well. I'm not trying to downplay the severity of being attacked by a bear or being attacked by a lion by any means, okay? But I think we can all agree that we would rather fight a bear than an army. We would rather fight one lion than a literal giant surrounded by thousands of soldiers, right? But how does this punk kid pull it off? How does this kid that's still trying to make it in life, how does this kid whose brothers don't believe in him, who the king is trying to talk him out of it, and the soldiers are mocking him, how does this kid have so much faith? And I think it comes down to he understood a key principle in faith. You see, faith, point number one, faith isn't built in crisis. Faith is revealed in crisis. Faith isn't built in crisis. It's revealed in crisis. You see, before David stood before a giant surrounded by two nations, he stood before a bear in the wilderness. Before he faced down Goliath and thousands of soldiers, he faced down a lion with no one else around. But he trusted God in both situations, in the big and the small. We see from the very beginning, from the very introduction of David, that he is different. This is what God is talking about when he tells Samuel, you see, man looks at the outside, but God looks at the heart. Samuel rolls into the house of Jesse knowing that one of these people is going to be the next king. And Jesse rolls out all of his sons except for one. And Jesse looks, he says, it's got to be these guys, right? It's got to be one of these guys. And God's like, no. It's not them. It's someone else. And where's David in this situation? David is off in the field, being faithful to his assignment, quietly putting his time in. You see, David is building a deep history and connection with God when no one else is looking. Time and time again, David trusted God and God delivered. Time and time again, David trusted God in the small things. So when the big moments came, when he was facing down a literal giant surrounded by thousands of people, David had countless stories in his past of God protecting him and God coming through. He protected me in the wilderness. He protected me from the bear. He protected me from the lion. He protected me over and over and over again. And I believe he'll do it again. You see, oftentimes we think that our faith only happens in those big leaps of faith. And I'm not trying to discourage you from taking those big leaps of faith by any means. But the reality is our faith is often defined by the mundane and the daily and the routine and the day in, day out. Paul tells us in Galatians that we should not give up on doing good, because at the proper time, we will reap a harvest if we don't give up. Faith isn't flashy. Faith isn't self-serving or self-seeking. You see, if we only trust God in the big, scary times in our life, we ignore the faith that is refined behind closed doors. In Matthew chapter 6, in the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus is telling thousands of people how their faith should be defined, and it should be defined quietly and consistently. He says, when you practice righteousness, don't do it to be seen by others. When you give to the needy, don't announce it with trumpets, hoping that others see your generosity. Instead, when you give to the needy, do it in secret so no one else knows. When you pray, don't stand on the street corner longing for the attention of others. When you pray, don't go babbling on using all these big fancy words so others see how spiritual you are. No, when you pray, what are you supposed to do? Go behind closed doors, and there you will pray. When we don't trust God in the big moment, in the small moments, why do we think we're going to trust God in the big moments? And we constantly tell God, well, just make this happen, and then I will begin to trust you. God, give me a platform, and then I will communicate your word. But you can't be trusted to study God's word day in and day out. God, give me a raise, and then I will begin to tithe. You can't be trusted with a little. Why would you be trusted with a lot? It's in those small moments that our faith is defined. In Luke chapter 16, Jesus is telling his disciples, he says, whoever is trusted with little will be given much, but whoever's dishonest with little will be dishonest with much. Your relationship with God, your faith in God is defined by the quiet moments, not the loud ones. Your relationship with God is defined by what happens in private, not public. You see, when everyone else was afraid of Goliath, David knew he had the army of the living God by his side. And he had built a deep trust and history with God through the quiet moments, through the moments that no one else saw. And he knew God would deliver. He built that history, and we are called to do the same. The second thing I think he understood, point number 2, in victory, credit isn't yours to take. In victory, credit isn't yours to take. Can you imagine the moment of bliss that David is feeling right now? He just conquered a giant. He just killed a giant. While everyone else was afraid, he went and faced and defeated Goliath. But from the very get-go, he was laying the groundwork saying, this is not my victory. This is because of God and God alone. He's talking to Goliath, and he's kind of calling his own shot right here. He says that it isn't going to be the sword or the spear that kills Goliath. It's because of God. And that he tells them that when he dies, God is going to get the credit. And everyone's going to know that God saves, that God is in control, and that God is powerful. He gives God the credit at all times. Psalm chapter 9 is one of the most powerful psalms, and it's something that David wrote. And this specific psalm, we don't know exactly what time he wrote it or what point of his life. Maybe he was younger, maybe he was older, but it's not hard to imagine that David wrote this psalm after the events of him killing Goliath. And I'm going to read it, and you're going to see the credit that he gives God every step of the way. Psalm chapter 9, verse 1 says this: I will give thanks to you, Lord, with all my heart. I will tell of all your wonderful deeds. I will be glad and rejoice in you. I will sing the praises of your name, O Most High. My enemies, they turn back. They stumble and perish before you. For you have upheld my right and my cause, sitting enthroned as the righteous judge. You have rebuked the nations and destroyed the wicked. You have blotted out their name forever and ever. Endless ruin has overtaken my enemies. You have uprooted their cities. Even the memories of them have perished. David gives credit to God every step of the way, thanking him for everything he's done. But that only comes after building a deep history with God. And when he builds that history, he knows that God gets the credit, God gets the honor, and God gets the praise. And the moments of victory in your life are you giving God the praise, thanking him for everything he's done. Think about it like this. Some of you are living the life right now that you prayed for years ago. Have you thanked God for that? Some of us are experiencing God's blessing every single day. You prayed for a sickness to go away, and it did. You prayed for a situation to be resolved, and it was. You prayed for a relationship to be restored, and it was restored better than you could have imagined. Give God the honor and praise. And tell God about how good he has been to you. Tell others about how good God has been to you and all that he has provided for you. And for some of you, you need to start building that history and that trust and that connection with God today. You can start today. I don't know what that decision looks like for you. For some of you, you need to turn your life over to him. You need to say, God, I'm not trusting you in the big things or the small things, but I need to trust you with my life. I need to start that connection because I understand that you love me. I understand that you care for me. I understand that you have sacrificed everything for me. And God, I want to say thank you for that. For others of you, maybe it's a smaller step. You need to say, hey, God, I need to start reading my Bible more consistently because I'm not being trusted with little right now. God, I need to start praying more consistently. God, I need to start tithing consistently because I'm withholding a lot of small things from you. And then when the big things happen, I don't have this connection. I don't have this history with you. So God, I'm going to turn over countless small things over to you so that when the big things happen in my life, and they will happen, I can trust you with a faith that David had. When I'm facing the literal giants in my life, I know that the God of the universe has my back. I don't know what decision you need to make. In just a few moments, we're going to have pastors and leaders up front, and we're going to sing one more song, and whatever decision you need to make. Maybe you need to come forward and you need to make a big step and you need to get baptized today. We'll make that happen. Maybe right now you are facing a big situation. You are facing a sickness that is scary. You are facing a relationship that is broken, and you just need prayer. Whatever that is, we are here for you. We want to pray for you. We want to come alongside you. We want to encourage you and challenge you. I don't know what decision you need to make, but I can tell you this. Your faith starts with one small step. And maybe your faith starts today with one step down here. And maybe your faith starts today with one step to prayer. Or maybe your faith starts today with one step towards baptism. Whatever it is, I pray that you would be bold in your faith, bold in your trust in God. I don't know what it is, but I pray that God would bless you and that God would be with you every step of the way. Let's stand and let's sing.